was bruised, bleeding beneath my gown, trying desperately to keep steady as I poured wine at the king's feast when the torches turned to stars before my eyes. But before I struck the unforgiving stone, arms like forged steel caught me. Alpha King William, the sovereign whose growl could silence a battlefield, held me as though I were something precious instead of a broken Omega Maid. And when he saw the darkness painted across my skin, his eyes blazed wolf gold, and the entire hall felt his fury. What he did to my mate that very night changed everything. I knew I was in grave danger the moment I tried to move. The bruises along my ribs screamed in protest, a searing agony that stole the breath from my lungs. I gripped the wine pitcher tighter, my knuckles bone white as I fought to maintain composure. Around me, nobles laughed and feasted, discussing alliances and harvest yields. Words that suddenly meant nothing compared to the fire spreading through my battered body. Do not fall. Do not let them see. Do not show weakness. Now, let me tell you how I went from hiding my shame beneath servants' cloth to being claimed by the most feared alpha in all the kingdoms. The world tilted violently, and I felt myself falling toward the cold stone floor. This is how it ends, I thought, collapsing before the entire court. My shame laid bare for all to witness. Strong hands caught me before impact. Enormous hands called from sword work, but impossibly gentle as they pulled me against a chest that felt carved from mountain stone. The scent of pine and leather and something wild filled my senses, cutting through the fog of pain. I have you. The Alpha King's voice rumbled against my ear, deep enough to resonate in my bones. And despite the agony, despite the horror of what was happening, I felt safe for the first time in 6 moons. The great hall had gone deathly silent. I wanted to vanish into shadow. I wanted to explain myself. I wanted anything except to be held in King William's arms while hundreds of eyes bore into us with shock and speculation. But my body had surrendered. The strength that had kept me upright for 3 days finally shattered, and I sagged against him, too broken to pretend anymore. Everyone out. The king's command cut through the stillness like a blade through silk. The feast is ended. Leave us now. I heard benches scraping against stone, hurried footsteps rushing toward the exits. Whispered conversations quickly silenced by nervous glances back at their sovereign. No one questioned Alpha King William. No one ever dared. His arms shifted beneath me, one sliding under my knees as he lifted me completely from the ground. I should have protested. I should have insisted I could walk on my own, but the truth was I could not, and we both knew it. Please, I whispered, my voice barely audible. My lord, I can manage, you cannot. His jaw was granite as he strode from the feast hall, his gait powerful and purposeful. And you will tell me who marked you this way. It was not a question. It was a command from an alpha to an omega. One my wolf recognized even as my human mind recoiled. Moved through corridors I had only cleaned, never walked as anything but invisible. Past guards who immediately averted their gazes, past servants who pressed themselves against walls and bowed their heads. Everyone understood that when the king looked like this, all controlled wrath and barely leashed violence. Wisdom lay in becoming unseen. He brought me to his private chambers, rooms I had glimpsed only once while changing linens with the head housekeeper. The space was vast, yet somehow intimate. Tapestries depicting ancient battles covered stone walls. A massive hearth crackled with flames that cast dancing shadows across furs and dark wood furnishings. He laid me upon his own bed with a gentleness that seemed impossible for hands that had cleaved men in two on the battlefield. Stay still, he ordered, moving to pull a cord that would summon servants. Within moments, Master Aldrich arrived, the court healer, his weathered face creasing with concern as he took in the scene. Behind him came 2 handmaidens, their eyes carefully downcast. Your Majesty, what has happened? She is injured. William's voice was deadly calm, the kind of quiet that preceded storms. Tender, discover the extent of the damage. The king turned his wolf-bright gaze to me. Your gown must be removed so the healer can examine you properly. The handmaidens will assist. My hands trembled as I nodded, shame burning hotter than pain as the women carefully unfastened the laces of my servant's dress. The fabric clung to some of the wounds, and I bit my lip hard enough to taste copper as it pulled away from bruised flesh. I heard Master Aldrich inhale sharply. Behind him, one of the handmaidens made a small sound of distress before catching herself. The bruises were worse than I had realized. I knew purple and black marks covered my ribs like grotesque flowers blooming across pale skin. Fingerprints circled my upper arms in violent bands of violet. My back bore the pattern of a belt buckle, raised welts that had barely begun to heal. Merciful moon. Master Aldrich's voice shook with barely contained fury. Who did this? I felt King William's presence behind the healer. Felt the weight of his stare like a physical force. The air itself seemed to thicken with the power of his wolf pressing against his skin demanding release. Who one word spoken so softly, it was almost gentle. But I heard the death promise woven through it. My throat closed to speak his name felt like betrayal. Even now, even after everything, the shame of being a mated Omega who could not keep her alpha satisfied, who had driven him to violence through her own inadequacy. Please, I cannot, you can. William moved into my line of sight, and I saw his eyes had gone full wolf, amber, gold, and utterly inhuman. And you will, because whoever put their hands on you will answer for it under the old laws. There was something in his voice, in the way he looked at me, that broke through 6 moons of silence and suffering. Garrett, I finally whispered. Garrett of House Thornwood, my bonded mate, he said I needed to learn in Omega's place, that I was too willful, too proud, that if I knew what was proper, I would withdraw into meekness and be grateful he still claimed me despite my flaws. The words rushed out now. Everything I had held inside finally spilling free. When I would not bend, when I spoke back, when I dared suggest he was wrong about the grain stores, he cornered me in the lower kitchens 3 nights past. He said he would teach me silence. William's hands clenched into fists at his sides, and I heard his knuckles crack. For a long moment, he simply stared at me, his chest rising and falling with controlled breaths as he fought for dominance over the beast within. Then he turned sharply and strode to the chamber door, flinging it open with enough force to make it crash against stone. Summon Captain Rodri and the King's Guard. His voice carried the alpha command that would compel immediate obedience. Tell them to bring Garrett of House Thornwood to the old courtyard. Tell them the king invokes blood right. Master Aldrich's face palled. Your Majesty, blood right has not been called in 3 generations. It is called tonight. William's eyes never left mine as he spoke, and it will be satisfied before dawn breaks. I drifted in and out of fevered dreams, my body floating somewhere between waking and the dark pull of unconsciousness. Master Aldrich had given me something for the pain, some bitter draught that made the edges of reality blur and soften. Through the haze, I heard sounds, the clatter of armor, boots striking stone in military precision. And then cutting through it all, a single howl that made every wolf in the castle answer in kind. It was not a call to hunt or a warning of danger. It was a declaration of vengeance. The Alpha King had invoked blood, right? I tried to rise, to stop what I knew was coming, but my body refused to obey. The handmaidens whispered soothing words as they pressed cool cloths to my forehead, but their hands trembled. They knew what blood meant. Everyone who had grown up hearing the old tales knew. It meant trial by combat under the ancient laws. It meant justice rendered in fang and claw. It meant Garrett would face the Alpha King himself, and only one would walk away. Time became strange after that. I heard horses departing, the thunder of hooves fading into the night. I heard my own voice crying out, though I could not remember what words I spoke. I felt hands holding me down gently as I thrashed, as fever and fear tangled together into nightmares where blood ran black across stone and amber eyes watched me from the shadows. When I finally surfaced into something resembling consciousness, the chamber was quiet. Dawn light filtered through the high windows, painting everything in shades of pearl and rose. The fire in the hearth had burned down to glowing embers, and King William sat beside it, watching me. I startled, my breath catching as my eyes adjusted, and I truly saw him. He had changed from his feast clothes into simple dark breeches and an unlaced tunic. His hair, usually bound back, fell loose around his shoulders, and his hands, resting on his knees, were wrapped in clean bandages that could not quite hide the split knuckles beneath. Blood stained the edges of those bandages. Not his own, I realized with a lurching sensation in my chest. You are awake. His voice was rough, as though he had been screaming. Or perhaps it was his wolf finally released after being caged for so long. I struggled to sit up and he was beside me in an instant, his hand gentle on my shoulder. Be still, you need rest. What did you do? The words came out broken, barely a whisper. What needed doing? His amber eyes held mine, and I saw something ancient lingering there, something that was not quite human. I invoked the old ways. Your mate answered the call as the laws demanded. Is he dead? William's expression did not change. No, though he will wish he were for some time. Bloodright does not require death, only submission. He submitted. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt something complicated and raw, like a wound finally exposed to air. He fought under the old laws, William continued, his voice dropping lower. He claimed you were his to discipline as he saw fit, that Omega bonds grant dominion over flesh. So I reminded him what true dominion looks like. His hand moved to cut my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I reminded him that in my kingdom, strength is not measured by who you can break, but by who you choose to protect. I reminded him that alphas who prey on those weaker earn only one fate. What fate? I breathed. Exile. He leaves at first light with nothing but the clothes on his back and the scars I gave him. The bond between you is severed by my authority as Alpha King. You are free of him, Alice. My name on his lips sent shivers down my spine. I had not realized he even knew it. You knew my name? Something flickered in his eyes, almost like guilt. I have known your name for many moons. I have watched you move through my halls with grace that belied your station. I have seen your strength, your cleverness, the way you never bowed, even when the world demanded it. His thumb traced my jaw. I knew the moment Garrett of House Thornwood claimed you as mate. And my wolf howled with rage because we both knew he would break you if given the chance. Why did you not intervene before? Because you were bonded. Because laws bind even kings. His eyes closed briefly, pain crossing his features, because I told myself it was not my place, that I was simply drawn to you for reasons I could not name or claim. And now you are free. Now I have ended the threat. His eyes opened again, pinning me with their intensity. Now I can finally admit what my wolf has known since the first moment I caught your scent in the summer gardens. What? My heart thundered against my bruised ribs, that you were never meant to be his. His hand slid into my hair and I realized he was trembling. That perhaps you were always meant to be mine. I should have protested. Should have reminded him that I was Omega and he was king. That the distance between us was an unbridgeable chasm of rank and propriety. Should have remembered that kings did not claim servant girls, especially not broken ones, still healing from another's cruelty. But when he leaned forward, his forehead resting against mine, all I could think was that this felt inevitable, like every choice I had ever made had led to this moment. Tell me to stop, he murmured, his breath warm against my lips. Tell me this is not what you want, and I will leave you be. I will give you chambers of your own, safety and distance, and never speak of this again. I looked into his eyes and saw both the monster he had become in the old courtyard, and the man who now trembled at the thought of my rejection. I saw the Alpha King who had invoked ancient laws for a mere servant, and the wolf who had recognized something in me that I had not yet recognized in myself. Do not stop, I whispered. His mouth met mine with a gentleness that made my chest ache. The kiss tasted of smoke and something deeper, something wild and ancient and absolutely right. His hand cradled my face like I was made of spun glass. Even as I felt the barely leashed power vibrating through him, when he finally pulled back, his eyes had shifted to full wolf gold. Mine, he growled softly, the word resonating with alpha command and something more primal. My Omega, my mate, mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to claim when you are healed and whole. And looking into those inhuman eyes, feeling the warmth of his hands and the safety of his presence, I realized I had already made my choice. I had made it the moment he caught me when I fell. Yours. I breathed and watched something fierce and possessive and tender bloom across his face. In the firelight of dawn, wrapped in the Alpha King's arms, I finally understood what it meant to be truly safe. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows and the scent of fresh bread. For a moment, I forgot where I was, forgot everything that had happened. Then the dull ache in my ribs reminded me, and memory came flooding back. The feast, the fall, the king's chambers, blood right, the kiss that still burned on my lips like a brand. You should not be awake yet. William's voice came from across the chamber, and I turned my head to find him approaching with a wooden tray laden with food. Master Aldrich said, "You would sleep until midday at least. I am stronger than I look." The words came out rougher than intended, my throat dry. I know. His smile was slight but genuine as he set the tray across my lap. I have watched you carry water buckets that would make grown men stumble. I know exactly how strong you are, Alice. There was something in the way he said my name, like it was precious, that made heat pull low in my belly despite the pain. The tray held more food than I typically saw in 3 days. Fresh bread still warm from the ovens, butter and honey, cold meat and cheese, berries that must have cost a fortune this late in the season, and a steaming cup of what smelled like chamomile tea. My lord, this is too much, William. His eyes met mine, amber still lingering at the edges. When we are alone, you will call me William. I cannot. You are the king and you are mine. He sat on the edge of the bed close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. Rank matters not between mates. The word hung in the air between us. Mates not bonded yet, but the intention clear. We are not. I began, but he cut me off with a gentle finger pressed to my lips. Not yet, but we will be when you are healed. When you are ready. His hand dropped away, though his eyes blazed with barely suppressed hunger. My wolf demands I claim you now. Mark you so thoroughly that every creature in this kingdom knows you belong to me, but I will not take you while you are injured and vulnerable. I am not that fragile. No, you are not. His jaw clenched, and I saw the effort it took him to maintain control. But I am not the alpha who broke you, Alice. I will not be the one who takes before you are ready to give freely. So we wait. The frustration in his voice was matched by the tension in his massive frame. Every muscle coiled tight. I realized then what it cost him. This restraint. An alpha king accustomed to taking what he desired, choosing instead to protect me even from himself. Eat. He commanded softly. You need strength to heal. I obeyed, though I could barely taste the food under the weight of his stare. He watched me like I might disappear if he looked away, like I was something precious he had searched for and finally found. After I finished, he took the tray and set it aside. Then, to my shock, he returned with a damp cloth and began gently cleaning my hands and face with a tenderness that made my chest ache. You do not need to serve me, I whispered. I am the servant, not anymore. He cupped my face in his large hands. You will recover here in my chambers under my personal protection. And when you are well, you will serve in my household, your household, as my personal attendant. His thumb stroked my cheek. It is a position of honor, one that will grant you chambers near mine and access to places most servants never see. The court will talk. Let them. His eyes flashed wolf gold for a heartbeat. You are under my protection now. Anyone who speaks against you speaks against their king. 3 days passed in a strange sort of dream. William tended me himself, bringing every meal, changing the dressings on my wounds with hands that should have been too large for such delicate work, but moved with surprising grace. He read to me from ancient texts, his deep voice washing over me like warm honey. He sat by the fire in the evenings and told me stories of his childhood, of learning to control his wolf, of the weight of a crown he had never wanted but wore because duty demanded it. And I learned what it meant to be valued by an alpha who saw beyond designation, who asked my opinions on matters of state and actually listened to my answers, who touched me like I was something sacred instead of something to be used. On the 4th morning, he announced his intentions to the council. I was not present, still recovering in his chambers, but the handmaiden who brought my midday meal could not contain her gossip. The entire council chamber erupted. "My lady," she breathed, eyes wide with scandal and delight. Lord Blackthorn demanded to know why the king would elevate a common Omega to such a position. And do you know what His Majesty said? I shook my head, though my stomach twisted with anxiety. He said that you had more courage in your smallest finger than most alphas possessed in their entire bodies, that you had survived what would have broken lesser wolves, that anyone who questioned his decision questioned his judgment as king. The handmaiden leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. They say his eyes went full wolf when he said it. They say Lord Blackthorn practically cowed in his seat. When William returned that evening, I confronted him immediately. You cannot do this. Give me such a position. The nobles will never accept it. I do not require their acceptance. He moved to the hearth, pouring wine into 2 goblets. I require their obedience. William, I am nobody. An Omega from a minor house with no connections, no dowry, no value to the crown. He turned sharply, and the intensity in his gaze stole my breath. You are everything. He crossed to me, setting the goblets aside to take my hands in his. You are the woman who survived 6 moons of cruelty without breaking. The woman whose strength called to my wolf across crowded halls. The woman I would invoke ancient laws to protect. His grip tightened slightly. You are not nothing, Alice, you never were, and I will spend however long it takes proving that to you. Tears pricked my eyes. No one had ever spoken to me this way, like I mattered beyond my usefulness. Why me? My voice cracked. You could have any Omega in the kingdom. Highborn ladies with beauty and breeding who would strengthen your alliances. I do not want alliances built on empty bonds. His forehead pressed to mine. I want you. My wolf wants you. And when you are healed, when you are ready, I will claim you before the gods and the realm, and everyone will know that you are mine. The promise in his words sent shivers through me that had nothing to do with fear. What if I am not enough? What if I cannot be what a king needs? You already are. His lips brushed mine, feather light, controlled. You are my mate, Alice, that is all I need. And as his arms wrapped around me, careful of my healing ribs, I let myself believe him. A fortnight passed like water through fingers, each day bleeding into the next in a rhythm I had never known before. My body mended under Master Aldrich's careful attention and William's watchful protection. The bruises faded from black to purple to yellow, the pain in my ribs softening from agony to a dull ache, then finally to nothing at all. But something else grew in place of that pain. Something far more dangerous. My new role as the king's personal attendant granted me access to chambers and councils I had only glimpsed from doorways while scrubbing floors. I learned the weight of crown business, the delicate balance of alliances and territories that kept the kingdom from tearing itself apart. I sat quietly in the corner during meetings with advisors, and sometimes William would glance at me and ask my thoughts on grain distribution or trade routes. The first time the entire council had gone silent with shock, an Omega, offering opinions on matters of state. But William had simply waited, his amber eyes fixed on mine with an expectation that gave me courage I did not know I possessed. And when I spoke of the lower villages and their needs, things I had heard whispered in kitchens and servant halls, he listened as though my words held the same weight as his lord's. The council learned quickly not to question it. Yet for all the changes in my station, the hardest transformation was the one happening between William and myself. We existed in a constant state of controlled restraint, like dry kindling, waiting for a single spark. Every morning he brought me breakfast himself, his fingers brushing mine as he handed me the cup of tea. Such small touches should not have set my skin aflame. But they did. Every evening we sat by the fire while he read correspondence, and I mended his tunics, a domesticity that felt simultaneously natural and forbidden. Sometimes his hand would rest on my shoulder as he passed behind my chair, and I would feel the heat of him seeping through layers of fabric, making my wolf whine with need. Every night he retired to the adjoining chamber while I slept in his bed, and I could hear him pacing beyond that door like a caged beast. Some mornings I woke to find deep claw marks gouged into the wooden door frame, evidence of his wolf's frustration. We were both suffering, and the entire castle knew it. The whispers followed me everywhere now. Through corridors where servants pressed themselves against walls and averted their eyes, in the kitchens where I no longer belonged, but sometimes visited, chasing memories of who I used to be. Through the gardens where I walked to escape the suffocating weight of watching eyes, the king some called me, though never loudly enough for William to hear, the Omega who bewitched him, the servant who climbed above her station through manipulation and base cunning. Others were kinder, if no less curious. They spoke of true mates and destiny, of ancient bonds that transcended rank. They wondered if I carried some hidden noble blood, some secret lineage that would make our match less scandalous. But I was nobody, just Alice, daughter of a minor house steward, an Omega who had survived cruelty and caught a king's eye through nothing more than being in the right place when fate decided to intervene. Lady Marjorie of House Ashford cornered me in the library one afternoon, her expression sharp, with barely concealed jealousy. She had been considered a prime candidate for queen, a highborn alpha female with impeccable breeding and powerful connections. "Tell me, little Omega," she purred, circling me like a predator. "What tricks did you employ to ensnare our king? What Omega WS did you use to cloud his judgment?" I met her gaze steadily, channeling the strength William saw in me, even when I could not see it myself. "I employed no tricks, my lady. I simply fell and he caught me." Her eyes narrowed. "You think this will last? That he will truly claim you? Kings do not mate servants, girl. They use them and discard them when more suitable options present themselves." The words struck deeper than I wanted to admit, lodging in the spaces where my own doubts lived. That evening, William found me on the balcony of his chambers, staring out at the kingdom spread below like a tapestry of torchlight and shadow. "You are troubled." It was not a question. His presence behind me was solid and warm, and I wanted desperately to lean back into him. "Lady Marjorie believes I am temporary, that you will tire of me and choose someone more appropriate." His hands settled on my shoulders, thumbs stroking the back of my neck in a way that made my knees weak. "Lady Marjorie is not my mate." His voice dropped to that dangerous rumble that meant his wolf was close to the surface. "You are? How can you be certain?" I turned to face him, and the intensity in his amber eyes stole my breath. "How do you know this is not simply attraction or pity or some passing fascination? Because my wolf has known you since before we ever spoke." His hands framed my face with devastating gentleness. "Because when I caught you that night, something inside me recognized something inside you. Because every moment I spend not claiming you fully is agony. Alice, my wolf claws at my skin demanding I mark you, bond you, make it so no one can ever question who you belong to." His thumb traced my lower lip, and I shivered. "But I wait because you deserve more than a claiming born of desperation. You deserve to be whole, to be certain, to choose this with clear eyes and healed heart." "I am healed." The words came out breathless. "Master Aldrich confirmed it yesterday." Something dark and possessive flashed across his features. "I know, he told me." "Then why do you still wait?" "Because," his forehead pressed to mine, his breath warm against my lips, "because I need to hear you say you want this. Not because I am king. Not because you feel obligated or grateful. But because your wolf calls to mind the way mine has been howling for you." My hands fisted in his tunic, pulling him closer despite the voice in my head that whispered, "I was not worthy of this. Of him. I want this." I breathed, "I want you. My wolf has been crying out for you since that first moment." "William, I was just too afraid to acknowledge it." His control finally cracked. His mouth claimed mine with a hunger that had been building for a fortnight. No longer gentle or careful, but consuming. His hands roamed my body. No longer worried about causing pain, mapping every curve like he was memorizing me by touch alone. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were pure wolf gold. "Tomorrow night," he growled. "Tomorrow night, I am taking you to the sacred grove where my ancestors performed bonding rituals. And I am claiming you under the full moon so thoroughly that the entire kingdom will feel it when our bond snaps into place." The promise in his words ignited something primal in my chest. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, my king, my alpha, mine." His answering smile was pure predator. "Yours," he agreed, "always yours." The moon hung full and heavy in the night sky, painting the gardens in silver and shadow. I could not sleep. Restless energy thrumming through my veins like lightning seeking ground. Master Aldrich had declared me fully healed that morning, and William's promise from the previous evening echoed in my mind with every heartbeat. Tomorrow night, he had said, but tomorrow felt impossibly distant. So I had slipped from the king's chambers, drawn to the gardens by instinct I could not name. The night air was cool against my skin, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine and something wilder, something that made my wolf stir and pace beneath my skin. I walked deeper into the gardens, past manicured hedges and ornamental fountains, following a pull I did not understand. And then I saw it. The ancient oak tree that stood at the heart of the royal gardens. Its massive trunk wider than 3 men standing shoulder to shoulder. Its branches spreading like a cathedral ceiling overhead. Something about it called to me. Drew me forward until my hand pressed against rough bark still warm from the day's sun. This is where they did it. William's voice came from behind me, and I spun to find him emerging from shadow like something conjured from moonlight and desire, where every alpha king for 20 generations claimed their mates under the full moon. My breath caught. You followed me. I felt you leave. His eyes were already wolf gold. Had probably been gold since the moment I slipped from his chambers. Did you think I could let you wander alone at night? Did you think my wolf would allow it? He stalked closer, and I suddenly understood what prey felt when hunted by something ancient and powerful. Except I did not want to run. I wanted to be caught. I could not sleep, I admitted, my back pressed against the oak as he closed the distance between us. I kept thinking about your promise. About tomorrow. Tomorrow is too far away. He stopped mere inches from me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Could see the way his chest rose and fell with barely controlled breathing. I have been practicing restraint for a fortnight, Alice. Watching you move through my chambers, smelling your scent on my linens, hearing your heartbeat through the walls at night when you dream. His hand pressed against the tree beside my head, caging me in. I am at the end of my endurance. My wolf demands I claim what is mine, and I find I no longer have the strength to deny him. Then do not deny him. The words left my lips before I could reconsider, bold and wanting. I am healed. I am here. And I am yours, William. I have been yours since you caught me. Something in him snapped. I saw the exact moment his control shattered. Saw civilization fall away to reveal the predator beneath. His mouth crashed onto mine with a hunger that stole my breath. All teeth and dominance and raw need finally unleashed. His hands were everywhere, tangling in my hair, gripping my waist, tearing at the laces of my gown with an urgency that should have frightened me, but instead ignited an answering fire in my blood. Here, he growled against my neck, his teeth grazing the sensitive junction where it met my shoulder. I am claiming you here, under this tree, under this moon, the way my ancestors claimed their mates for 20 generations. Yes. The word came out as a moan as his hands found bare skin beneath fabric. Yes, William, please. My gown fell away, pooling at my feet like water, leaving me exposed to moonlight and his burning gaze. For a moment he simply stared, his eyes tracking over every curve, every healed bruise that had faded to nothing. Perfect. His voice was reverent, worshipful. You are absolutely perfect, my omega, my mate, mine. His own clothes followed, stripped away with brutal efficiency until there was nothing between us but moonlight and need. He lifted me as though I weighed nothing, pressing me back against the ancient oak, and I wrapped my legs around his waist instinctively. This will be fierce, he warned. His forehead pressed to mine, giving me one last chance to refuse. My wolf will not be gentle tonight. I do not want gentle. I pulled him closer, nails digging into his shoulders. I want you, all of you, the king and the wolf and the man. Show me what it means to be yours. He entered me in one powerful thrust, and the world exploded into sensation. There was nothing careful about it, nothing restrained. This was claiming in its most primal form. 2 wolves recognizing their mate and demanding acknowledgement. The bark of the oak bit into my back. His hands gripped my hips hard enough to bruise, and I welcomed every fierce stroke, every possessive growl, every mark he left on my skin. This was what I had been waiting for without knowing it. This raw honesty, this perfect synchronization of need and fulfillment. Mine. He snarled against my throat, his teeth finding the space between neck and shoulder. Say it. Tell me who you belong to. Yours, I gasped, arching into him. Always yours, William. My alpha, my king, my mate. His teeth sank into my flesh at the same moment pleasure crested, and I felt something snap into place between us. Not just physical connection, but something deeper, something that resonated in my very soul. The mate bond, ancient and unbreakable, forged under moonlight and sealed in blood. I marked him in return, my own teeth finding his shoulder, tasting copper and salt and something indefinably him. And as I bit down, I felt his pleasure echo through the bond. Felt his wolf recognize mine, felt the completion of something that had been building since the moment he caught me in the feast hall. When we finally collapsed against the tree, both trembling and gasping for breath, the bond between us med with life, I could feel his heartbeat as though it were my own. Could sense his satisfaction and his possessive pride and his overwhelming relief that I was finally irrevocably his. The entire kingdom felt that. He murmured against my hair, his arms still wrapped around me like he would never let go. Every wolf within 100 miles just felt our bond snap into place. Good. My voice was steady despite my trembling legs. Let them know I am claimed. Let them know I am yours. He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. And what I saw there made my chest ache. love and possession and fierce protectiveness all tangled together with something that looked like wonder. "My queen," he said softly. "Because that is what you will be, Alice. My mate, my queen, the woman who stands beside me and rules this kingdom with courage I have never seen in any alpha." Tears pricked my eyes. "I am just an omega. You are my omega." His thumb wiped away the tears that spilled over. "And that makes you the most powerful woman in this kingdom." As we stood there in the moonlight, the ancient oak bearing witness to our claiming, I finally understood what it meant to be seen. To be valued, to be loved, not despite what I was, but because of it. I had fallen in that feast hall, broken and afraid, and William had caught me. But this, right now, wrapped in his arms with our bond singing between us. This was not being caught. This was choosing to fly. William wrapped his cloak around both of us, pulling me against his chest as we sank to the soft grass beneath the ancient oak. The moon watched over us like a benevolent witness. And for the first time in my life, I felt utterly complete. The bond hummed between us, a living thread of gold that connected my soul to his. I could feel his emotions as clearly as my own. His satisfaction, his possessive contentment, his overwhelming love that made tears prick at my eyes. "I can feel you," I whispered, my hand pressed over his heart. "Everything you feel, it echoes in me as it should." His fingers traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder beneath the cloak. "We are one now, Alice, two wolves, one soul. What I feel, you feel. What hurts you hurts me." His arms tightened around me, and through the bond, I felt a surge of fierce protectiveness so powerful it stole my breath. "I would burn this kingdom to ash before I let anyone harm you again." "I know." And somehow that knowledge brought comfort instead of fear, because I understood now that William's possessiveness was not about control. It was about cherishing something precious, protecting something irreplaceable. We sat in comfortable silence for a long moment, wrapped in each other in moonlight. Then his voice came quieter than I had ever heard it. "I have watched you for 3 seasons. I turned in his arms to look at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his tone. "What, 3 seasons?" he repeated, his eyes distant with memory. "The first time I saw you was in the late spring. You were carrying water buckets from the well, and you stopped to help an older servant who had stumbled. You took her burden as well as your own, even though it meant making 3 trips instead of 1. I barely remembered that day, but he spoke as though it were etched in his mind. "I asked my steward who you were. He told me you were nobody, an omega made from a minor house with no connections or prospects." His jaw clenched, but my wolf stirred at your scent carried on the breeze, and I could not stop watching for you after that. His hand cupped my face, thumb stroking my cheek. "I watched you in the garden singing to yourself while you worked. I watched you in the great hall serving nobles who did not even acknowledge your existence. I watched you smile at other servants, sharing your meager lunch because someone else had forgotten theirs. Why did you never speak to me? Because I am a king and you were a servant." His voice carried old pain, old frustration. "Because I told myself it was mere fascination that it would pass. Because when I learned you had been claimed by Garrett of House Thornwood, my wolf howled with rage, but there was nothing I could do." Through the bond, I felt the echo of that helpless fury. The months of watching me from afar, knowing I belonged to another, unable to intervene without breaking laws even kings were bound by. Every time I saw a new bruise, every time I caught the scent of fear on you, it took everything in me not to rip him apart. His hands trembled slightly. "But you were bonded, and I convinced myself I had no right, that my attraction was simply an alpha responding to an omega in distress. Until the feast. Until the feast, he agreed, until I caught you. And my wolf recognized what my heart had been trying to tell me for 3 seasons. You were not just some omega I found attractive. You were my mate, mine in every way that mattered." Tears spilled down my cheeks. I loved you too. The confession burst from me like a wound finally lanced. From afar, from impossible distance. I loved you. I would see you in the corridors and my heart would race. I would serve at feasts and pray you might glance my way. Just once, his arms tightened around me convulsively. I thought I was losing my mind, I continued. What kind of omega falls in love with a king? What kind of fool dreams so far above her station? So, I buried it. I accepted Garrett's claim because at least he wanted me, even if he did not love me. My voice broke. I thought I could forget you. I thought I could learn to be content with what I had instead of mourning what I could never have. Alice. He turned me fully to face him, his eyes blazing. You never should have had to settle. You never should have had to accept cruelty because you believed you deserved nothing better. I was nobody. You were never nobody. His forehead pressed to mine. You were always my mate. My wolf knew it. My heart knew it. I was just too much of a coward to claim you when I should have. You could not have known. I should have trusted my instincts. He pulled back, his expression fierce. I should have challenged Garrett's claim the moment it was announced. I should have invoked royal prerogative and declared my intention. Instead, I let propriety and politics convince me to wait, to watch, to hope the bond I felt was imagination. Through our connection, I felt his guilt, his regret for all the months I suffered while he wrestled with duty and desire. I forgive you, I said softly, because you caught me when it mattered most, because you invoked blood right and gave me freedom, because you loved me enough to wait until I was healed before claiming me. His kiss was gentle this time, tender in a way that made my chest ache. I will spend the rest of my life making up for every moment you suffered alone. Every tear you shed, every bruise you bore. Every night you cried yourself to sleep believing you were unloved. I am not unloved now. No, his smile was fierce and possessive and full of promise. Now you are cherished, now you are protected, now you are mine and I am yours, and nothing in this realm or any other will ever come between us. Through the bond, I felt the absolute truth of his words, felt his determination, his devotion, his willingness to sacrifice everything for my safety and happiness. What happens now? I asked. The court will not accept this easily. An Omega Queen, let them try to refuse. Wolf gold bled into his eyes. You are my true mate, recognized by the gods and sealed under the full moon. Any who challenge me directly. His hand sped possessively across my stomach. And soon, when you carry my heir, they will have no choice but to accept what fate has decided. The image sent warmth flooding through me through our bond, feeding back to him in an endless loop of shared desire. I want that. I admitted your children, your crown, your kingdom, all of it. William, I want to stand beside you and be more than I ever dreamed possible. You will be. He pulled me back against his chest, his chin resting atop my head as we gazed up at the stars. You will be my queen, my mate, my equal in all things, and anyone who cannot see your worth will learn to, or they will leave my court. We stayed there beneath the oak until dawn began to paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. Wrapped in his cloak and his arms and the golden thread of our bond, I finally understood what it meant to be home. Not a place, not a station, but a person. William was my home, my mate, my future, and I was his in every way that mattered. For all the days we would walk this earth together. The morning after our claiming beneath the oak, William summoned the royal seamstress before the sun had fully risen. I woke wrapped in his arms in his massive bed, our bond still humming with contentment, to find him already awake and watching me with possessive satisfaction. Today everything changes, he murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple. Today the court learns what it means to disrespect my mate. Within hours, I was standing in the seamstress's chamber, while she and 3 assistants swarmed around me with measuring tapes and fabric samples. Silks from the eastern provinces, velvets dyed in royal purple, lace so delicate it looked like spid spun from moonlight. My lord, this is too much. I protested as the seamstress held up a gown that probably cost more than my father earned in a year. William stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes tracking every movement with predatory focus. Nothing is too much for my queen. The seamstress's hands faltered. Queen, your majesty, soon. His smile was all teeth. And until the formal coronation, she will be dressed as befits the future sovereign of this realm. Is that understood? Yes, your majesty. The woman's voice trembled slightly, but her eyes held speculation and something that might have been approval. The first gown was deep emerald silk that brought out the gold flecks in my eyes. When I emerged from behind the changing screen, William's expression shifted to pure hunger. That one, he declared, she will wear that to the council meeting this afternoon. My stomach dropped. Council meeting? You are my mate. His eyes held mine. You will sit at my side during all matters of state. You will learn to rule beside me. And so began the most terrifying weeks of my life. That afternoon, I entered the council chamber dressed in silk and jewels, my hair arranged in an elaborate style that marked me as nobility rather than servant. The silence that fell was deafening. Lords and ladies who had watched me scrub their floors now stared as I took the seat William had placed directly beside his throne. A seat that had remained empty for his entire reign, waiting for a queen who had never materialized. Until now, Lord Blackthorn was the first to object, his face mottled with rage. Your Majesty, surely you do not intend for this. This Omega to participate in matters of governance. This Omega is my true mate. William's voice carried alpha command that made every wolf in the room flinch. The bond was sealed last night under the full moon at the sacred oak. She is your future queen, and you will address her with the respect her station demands, but she has no training, no bloodline worthy of. She has intelligence, courage, and my complete confidence. William leaned forward, his eyes flashing gold, which is more than I can say for most of you. Now, shall we discuss grain distribution? Or would you prefer to continue questioning my judgment? The meeting proceeded in tense silence, broken only by discussions of trade routes and tax collection. I stayed quiet, absorbing everything until William turned to me. Alice, you spent years working in the lower kitchens. What can you tell us about food stores and the servants' quarters? Every eye turned to me. I felt their judgment, their skepticism, their barely concealed contempt for the Omega who had somehow snared their king. But through the bond, I felt William's steady confidence, his absolute belief in my worth. So I spoke. I told them about the waste in the upper kitchens while lower servants went hungry. about the steward who skimmed supplies to sell on the black market, about the families in the outer villages who sent their children to work in the castle because at least here they would eat once a day. And I watched shock ripple through the council as they realized their king's Omega mate knew things their expensive spies had missed. Lady Marjorie approached me after the meeting, her expression carefully neutral. That was well spoken. Thank you, my lady, her eyes narrowed. Do not think this changes anything. You are still an Omega playing at being queen. And when he tires of you when the novelty wears off, you will find yourself back in the kitchens where you belong. She swept away before I could respond, leaving her poison to fester. That night, I stood on the balcony of William's chambers, our chambers now. Staring out at the kingdom I was somehow meant to help rule. She is wrong, you know. William's arms wrapped around me from behind. I will never tire of you. How can you be certain? I leaned back against him. What if she is right? What if I am not strong enough for this? You survived 6 moons of brutality without breaking. His lips brushed my ear. You walked into that council chamber knowing every person there wanted you to fail, and you spoke truth with a courage most warriors lack. You are exactly strong enough, Alice. The following weeks tested that strength daily. Some courtiers accepted me with cautious welcome. The servants I had worked beside rejoiced openly, their own prospects rising with mine, but others schemed in shadows. I found thorns placed in my slippers, heard whispers die as I entered rooms, discovered letters planted in my chambers suggesting I had used Omega manipulation, had employed love potions or witchcraft to ensnare the king. William's rage when he discovered these plots was terrible to behold. 3 court orders were banished. 2 were stripped of their titles. The rest learned quickly that plotting against the king's mate was plotting against the king himself. But I learned something more valuable than their fear. I learned my own power. Not the borrowed power of being William's mate, though that opened doors, but the power that came from speaking truth, from understanding both the highest nobles and the lowest servants, from seeing connections and solutions that others missed because they had never walked in both worlds. In council meetings, I began to speak more freely, suggesting diplomatic solutions where others demanded war, proposing economic reforms that would strengthen the entire kingdom rather than just the nobility. And slowly, grudgingly, even those who despised my Omega status began to listen. Lord Thornwood, an elderly alpha who had served 3 kings, approached me one evening. You are not what I expected. What did you expect, my lord? A pretty distraction. He smiled faintly. Instead, I find someone who might actually make a decent queen. Your Majesty, the title, used sincerely for the first time by someone outside William's inner circle, made tears prick my eyes. That night, I found William in his study, reviewing reports by candlelight. Our bond pulled me to him like a compass finding north. They are starting to accept me, I said softly. He looked up and the pride in his expression made my chest ache. Of course they are. I told you, you were always meant for this. I moved around the desk to settle in his lap, his arms immediately wrapping around me. A month ago, I was scrubbing floors. Now I am advising kings. Now you are becoming a queen. He pressed a kiss to my neck right over his claiming mark. My queen, the woman who will rule beside me and reshape this kingdom into something better than it has ever been through our bond. I felt his certainty, his unwavering belief that I was exactly where I belonged. And for the first time since that night beneath the oak, I began to believe it too, 2 moons after the feast that changed everything. William summoned the entire court to the throne room. I stood in our chambers, staring at my reflection in the polished silver mirror, and barely recognized the woman looking back. Gone was the frightened Omega maid who had hidden Bruises beneath rough wool. In her place stood someone draped in white silk embroidered with silver thread that caught the light like starfall. My hair was woven with pearls and crowned with a circlet of white gold. I looked like something from ancient tales, like the queens and stories I had heard as a child. But the true transformation was not in silk or jewels. It was in my eyes, in the strength I saw there. The confidence that had grown slowly over 2 moons of learning to command rooms instead of clean them. Are you ready? William appeared behind me, magnificent in formal attire, his own crown catching the afternoon light streaming through windows, through our bond. I felt his pride, his possessive satisfaction, his absolute certainty that I belonged exactly where I was about to stand. I am terrified, I admitted. Good. His hands settled on my shoulders and his eyes met mine in the mirror. Fear means you understand the weight of what we are doing. But terror does not mean you are not ready. Alice, you have been ready since the moment you survived what should have broken you. He turned me to face him, his hands cradling my face with that gentleness that still made my heart stutter. Today, I present you to the realm not as my mate, which they already know, but as their queen. Today the bond sealed beneath the oak becomes sanctified before gods and witnesses. Today you become sovereign over this kingdom alongside me. What if I fail them? You will not. His forehead pressed to mine. But even if you stumble, I will catch you. As I always have, as I always will. The throne room was packed when we entered. every noble house represented, every important figure in the kingdom present. They stood in formal rows, alphas and betas and omegas alike, watching as William led me down the center aisle toward the raised dais where 2 thrones waited. I felt their eyes like physical weight. Some held approval, others skepticism, still others barely concealed hostility, but I kept my spine straight and my head high, one hand resting in William's as we walked. The high priestess waited at the dais, ancient and powerful in her ceremonial robes. She had performed bonding ceremonies for generations of royalty, her authority superseded only by the gods themselves. Who comes before the throne? Her voice carried through the massive chamber without effort. William of House Silverest, Alpha King of the 7 territories, and Alice of House Thornwood, my true mate and chosen queen. A ripple moved through the crowd at his words. Chosen queen, not merely mate or consort, but full sovereign equal. The priestess's eyes assessed me for a long moment, and I forced myself to meet her gaze steadily. Finally, she smiled. The gods recognized true bonds regardless of mortal hierarchies. Step forward, both of you. We approached together, and the priestess produced a ceremonial blade etched with runes older than the kingdom itself. Blood to blood, she and Ed, soul to soul. 2 wolves made one under the eyes of the divine. Offer your oath before witnesses. William took the blade first, cutting his palm without flinching. His blood welled dark against his skin. I, William Alpha King, claim Alice as my true mate, my equal sovereign, my queen in all matters of throne and territory. I bind my life to hers, my strength to hers, my rule to hers. What threatens her threatens me. What honors her honors the crown. He pressed his bleeding palm to my chest directly over my heart, and through our bond, I felt the ancient magic of the oath seal into place. Then it was my turn. I took the blade with steady hands, cutting my own palm and meeting William's eyes as I spoke. I, Alice, Omega of House Thornwood, accept William as my true mate, my co-sovereign, my king in all matters of heart and realm. I bind my life to his, my strength to his, my wisdom to his rule. What threatens him threatens me. What honors him honors the kingdom. I pressed my bleeding palm to his chest, and power surged between us so strongly that several people gasped. The bond that had connected us since the oak now blazed like sunlight, visible to everyone with wolf senses. The priestess bound our hands together with white silk cord, wrapping it 7 times as tradition demanded. Before the gods, before the throne, before these witnesses, I declare this bond sanctified and sealed. She raised our joined hands. Behold your Alpha King and your Omega Queen. 2 souls made one, ruling together until death parts them. The throne room erupted. Some cheered genuinely, moved by the display of true mate bond. Others applauded politely, accepting what they could not change, but all bowed as William led me to the thrones and placed the queen's crown upon my head. It was heavier than I expected, the weight of it pressing down on my skull. But as I settled onto the throne beside William, our hands still bound together, I understood that the weight was not burden. It was responsibility, purpose, the physical manifestation of choosing to rise instead of remaining fallen. That evening, after the feast and celebration, William and I stood once more beneath the ancient oak where everything had truly begun. 2 moons ago, I fell in that throne room, I said softly, broken and terrified and certain my life was ending, and I caught you. His arms wrapped around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder, just as I always will. You did more than catch me. I turned in his embrace. You gave me purpose when I thought I was worthless. You gave me power when I believed I had none. You gave me a kingdom when I could not even protect myself. No. His hand cupped my face. You always had worth, Alice. You always had power. I simply helped you see what was already there. Through our bond, I felt the truth of his words. Felt his absolute conviction that my transformation was not his doing, but my own. I spent my entire life believing Omega meant weak. I whispered that it meant I existed to serve, to submit, to accept whatever others deemed appropriate for me. And now I stand as queen over the realm. Now I make laws instead of simply obeying them. Now I understand that strength is not about designation, but about choosing to rise every time you fall. William's smile was fierce with pride. Now you understand what I saw from that very first moment. The woman who would reshape what it means to be Omega in this kingdom. Who would prove that power comes in many forms. I looked up at the oak tree, its branches spread against the star-filled sky, and felt profound gratitude for the moment I had collapsed. Because falling had led to this, to love and purpose and sovereignty I never could have imagined. Thank you, I breathed. For catching me when I fell, for seeing me when I was invisible, for loving me when I could not love myself. Always. His lips brushed my temple. In this life and whatever comes after, Alice, I will always catch you. And I knew with the certainty that came from our bond and the crowns we both wore, that he spoke absolute truth. I had fallen, bruised and broken in a throne room full of strangers, and the Alpha King had caught me in every way that mattered. Now I want to hear from you. Where in this world are you watching from? What kingdom? What territory calls you home? Drop a comment and let me know, and tell me what was your favorite moment in this journey. Was it the claiming beneath the oak, the moment William invoked blood, right? Or perhaps when I finally stood as queen before the court?